Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching, and today I have a special announcement for our listeners, for our audience, and I am so excited to share this with you. So let's dive in. If you're parenting a sensitive kid who is stuck in the meltdowns, you're dealing with meltdowns on a daily, multiple times a week basis. Your child is losing it, they're shutting down, they're refusing, they might be hitting or kicking or screaming. I am so excited for this announcement today. We're going to spend all of our time focusing on this one thing. We have a special course for you that I am thrilled to announce. And I know that so many of you have been following us, have been listening to the podcast diligently, binging all of the lessons that we've been doing for years and years and years. And the way that we have served our clients has been, for the last 8 years since we've been in business in this avenue, has been through direct service. We have directly served our clients by holding their hand and walking them through my signature program that I designed years ago. And for some of our listeners, this has left a gap. We've had questions over the years. How do I learn your information? How do I learn just a little bit? I don't really think we're in the meltdown cycle, but I love what you're teaching on the podcast and I want to know more. I don't think my family is a proper fit for boot camp. And so I am just thrilled to have this conversation with you because here at MTC, we help parents stop the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. We have a 98% success rate for all of our clients. 95% of our clients stop the meltdown cycle in 8 weeks, like within our 8-week program. They stop it. That's proven. It's printed out in my latest book. That's not part of the announcement today, so well, I'll leave it there. But all of the data is available in print on paper for you to check out. So that is not a question. What the question is whether or not a family might need our work, or whether or not a family might need to prevent the need for our work. And this is it, guys. We're going to talk about it today. So I am so excited because it has been a question that so many people have asked us over the years, and I have just not wanted to split my focus on serving our clients and then also generating additional supports, because the best business, the most successful business, focuses on one thing, does it exceptionally well, and make sure that it doesn't need the owner to survive, right? And so I spent 8 years making sure that that is rock solid. My company can run without me. I can go have a baby. I've had one already while running this business. I can go have another one because I'm gonna in September. And I wanted to make sure our clients were completely taken care of. Our team was thoroughly trained and consistent year over year, as well as our systems just able to just sing and obviously live my life with that too. And I've done that for the last 8 years. And now here we have it. We have been sitting and chewing and stewing on this opportunity for our audience, for you guys. So, and it is available. So I'm so excited to talk to you about our mini course, our self-led program called Manage the Meltdowns. In that process, you will be able to take those meltdowns from an 11 out of 10, they're off the scale, bring them down to a 7 out of 10. We're teaching you how to immediately shift the dynamic right before the meltdowns, as well as in order to prevent the meltdowns altogether. Now, obviously, I will absolutely talk today about the difference between this self-led course and our signature program where we work directly with clients. However, I want to spend a lot of time focusing on who might be a proper fit for our Manage Your Meltdowns mini course. And I am pumped about it. We've seen such great success. We've had wonderful feedback with the families that we've launched it to so far. And I'm very excited to talk about the work that we'll be doing. So, as a parent of a sensitive child, that your child learns best from you. If you have been following me for more than one episode, you have learned that topic. Your sensitive child learns best from you. They do not learn from an outside party more efficiently or effectively, especially when you learn how to teach them in a way where they're feeling heard and understood. And when a child feels misunderstood by their parent, that will never be less important. I'll stop with the double negatives. I'll say it again differently. That will never be less important than if they are being understood by a stranger, by a teacher, by someone they spend an hour a week with. Your child must feel understood by you first and most in order to feel connected, calm, effective, and centered in the reason why they are here on this earth, and in their true level of worthiness to be able to trust that they are here to receive, and that they deserve living a life that's not miserable. And a child who is stuck with regular meltdowns is miserable. Whether you are working on this or not, your child, it's important that we acknowledge reality. Your child is miserable, and we want you to see success, and I want you to slow this process down, get some immediate results, and take it to the next level if that's a good fit with our team. Obviously, absolutely an option as well. So let's focus on this, okay? So what process is necessary for a family, for a parent to stop those meltdowns from going off the charts, right? Your first objective is to ensure that you are communicating in a safe and effective way, that you are telling your child you understand what makes them tick. And this is one of the things that I hear so often from parents of sensitive kids, that you struggle to understand how your child fits the temperament trait. You wonder whether or not your child's behavior is stemming from anxiety. You whether or not your child is just obstinate or manipulating you. You wonder whether or not your child's behavior is purposeful because they're holding it all in at school and then they're just losing it at home. You're concerned about other labels like level 1 autism, uh, pervasive, pathological demand avoidance, anxiety, sensory processing disorder, and you're trying to figure out where does SPS fit in, sensory processing sensitivity, and whether or not your child needs a mental health provider to address anxiety, or if you need to solve this problem yourself. And quite frankly, the question is answered in the Manage Your Meltdowns course. That focus is part of our modules. We go deep in the diagnostics of understanding how the temperament is actually much more likely for sensitive kids, and also how you can discern whether or not your child is neurodivergent in an additional way, perhaps ADHD, for example, or some other factors. I spell it out, all right? It's very clear in that mini course. So if you spend the $27 for the mini course, because that's the cost, for just one thing, being clear whether or not your child needs an evaluation for ADHD or solely has the temperament of sensitivity, like having that clarity is a life changer for you. But obviously, the work that we do in the mini course that I did for you, that you'll do alongside me with on your own, is going to be worth a heck of a lot more than that. Okay, so I want to make sure that we're clear on what's next, right? What else are you going to be able to work on? And the focus for you to understand your child's experience and their temperament and to truly know what's going on inside their mind is critical for your child's success. And I want to talk about this because one of the things that I hear so frequently from parents of sensitive kids is that they don't understand why their child is behaving in a certain way. So there's a couple things. I'm going to use some examples, okay? Because I've been taking phone calls from families for 8 years in this avenue, but I've been talking to parents with sensitive kids for 15 years, post-masters. So I've had a fair amount of conversations with parents who are puzzled by their child's behavior, and there are clear markers for me in how a parent describes their child's behavior that helps me discern whether or not a family is stuck in a meltdown cycle comparatively to whether or not a child is demonstrating age-appropriate behavior. And that is absolutely lined out very thoroughly. There's hours of content in this mini course for such a cheap price, and it's certainly not cheap content, right? So clearly, I wanted to ensure that there was zero barrier to entry for everyone to get this information, and also recognize that the quality of what you're going to be learning is absolutely worth it, regardless of your financial situation. And that is something that was important to me for this particular work, so that we could help more people without particularly, those who could work with us. Because obviously, if you've been following me for a minute, you are clear that it does take an investment to work with my clients, and the ripple effect for all of your family members is very high, as well as the impact you'll make in the community once this problem is solved. However, some families aren't able to make it into our front door in that avenue right away. So I am clear in the mini course what your work is going to be doing in terms of discerning what's age appropriate behavior, what's inappropriate for a sensitive child to be demonstrating, and also how you can discern the difference between personality and temperament. This is a big thing that a lot of parents get stuck on. My kid's behavior right now shows up like XYZ, and I don't know what that means about who they are inside. That is totally answered in the Manage Meltdowns course, okay? Because it's a big difference, and I want to share this example with you. Okay, so I've got two examples that I've got on my docket here for us to discuss. One family contacted me, and this mom is actually an occupational therapist. She has a skill set here, and she is familiar vaguely with our work. She's had a a friend go through our work. They didn't really discuss it much. However, she was sent my information, and her question was that her child, his young kid in elementary school, was having a conversation with mom about the frustration that she was exhibiting, and she was engaging in what mom might label as obstinate behavior. And mom was hinting that she had presumed the child was manipulating her, or making it up, or engaging in this behavior ineffectively. And this was a clear mismatch in mom's understanding of the root cause of the child's behavior. And as a result, mom was wondering if this child needed to go work out her skill set with someone else, because mom was concerned she was the trigger for the child's behavior. So as a parent, you might think, if I'm the one who's quote unquote screwing up the dynamic in the house, and this was, it's not words I would use, but it might be words that it's certainly words we've heard our clients say to themselves. So that's what I'm using here. If I'm the one, turning this the wrong way, if you will, how can I be the one that is going to create fast healing for my kid and fast growth for my kid? If I need to change, how does that lead to my kid changing? And so the work that we do in the Manage the Meltdowns course, we talk about the science that when you leverage your relationship with your kid, you're actually much more capable of turning this around faster than if your kid has to go grow a new relationship with a stranger. Because as much as your child might be extroverted or forthcoming intellectually about their problems, they are not emotionally forthcoming about their problems, because if they were, they would be demonstrating that to their parents, and they would be solving their problems faster because they would feel more confident. So we totally work on that at the MM course as well. And then the other thing that I wanted to focus on is related to a parent who was considering working with us. However, her child was very young. This child was a toddler, and she was wondering, when is too early to start instituting what you teach? And I said, my response was, I teach this stuff to my babies from birth. I manage emotions. I communicate about emotions. I acknowledge sensory overwhelm and the institution of that upon birth for my children. And as a result, my sensitive child did not have a meltdown cycle in our house because, at all. What I mean by that is, in our household, we did not deal with the problem because that I saw for other families, because I parent the way that I teach parents to parent from start. So what we've seen over the years is that when parents demonstrate a skill set for their sensitive kid and they stop the meltdown cycle for the skills that they learn in boot camp with us, they also impart those skills to the families, to the rest of the family. And that actually supports younger children grow in their skill set faster. Oops, excuse me. So in Manage the Meltdowns, your objective is to learn diagnostics, to understand in layman's terms what the difference is between some of the major factors you might be considering in terms of taking into account whether or not your child needs a mental health evaluation, and then recognizing clearly, and I'm going to say that here, but I also talk about it, differently in the course, that regardless of your child's diagnostics, you need to parent differently. So when you understand your child more effectively, you have the capacity to do that. And these are life-saving skills for sensitive kids. they are life-changing skills for everybody. So as I was alluding to with our clients who come in with one child stuck in the meltdown cycle and the rest of the kids just kind of like surviving and trying to keep the peace and holding it all in, what we find through our intensive work with parents who are going through boot camp with us is that once the child who is experiencing the meltdowns, it has decreased their intensity, we actually see that the children who were holding it all in and pretending to be perfect, and just like I was when I was growing up, my sister was losing it. I tried, I hung on for dear life to not show vulnerability or emotional intensity until I got angry, because anger was in society as well as in my own personal household. Growing up, it was the most acceptable emotion, though certainly was still shamed and yelled at for it. It was. It wasn't one that my mom specifically, ever really apologized for. So it was the biggest emotion that was most acceptable, though also was the most shamed emotion. And so for me, I didn't know how to manage that, but I also could have certainly used these skills growing up, even though I'm not a highly sensitive person. And as had my parents learn these skills earlier, then obviously they'd be impacting my sister differently. But the entire family grows when you support the child who has the highest level of emotional need. The entire family gets prioritized when you do that because you're working on the biggest hole in the boat, if you will. Now, I'm not saying the child is the whole. The child's skill deficit and the parent's lack of teaching the skill effectively is the hole in the boat. And the whole family's going to drown when you don't fill that hole. And that's what happened. We all struggled in our and came to an awareness of that struggle in our adulthood. And all three of us had to figure that out. And unfortunately, um, it ruined a lot of relationships that I truly wish that I didn't ruin. And I know my family members, my siblings would say the same, that had we learned these skills earlier, we would have significantly decreased our negative impact on the world. Before we were capable of impacting positively, we had to go through lots of like therapy or personal development work to turn that around. And it was very painful, to learn emotion regulation skills and have that be a secret, an obvious secret, but to have to work on that on my own because I didn't know how to handle it. So I speak from personal experience, but I also, like I said, I speak from professional experience, having served thousands of families at this point, and over 800 in this company alone, teaching the skill set of managing emotions to a parent and decreasing the stress. So you're not just white knuckling it until your kid goes to bed. Because we all know that that's not sustainable, that you're going to have at least 3 to 5 times a week where you are close to losing it or you're losing it in front of your kids because you just want freaking bedtime to get, rocking and rolling, right? And you've had enough, because if your only capacity to demonstrate calm is to just stuff it until you can let loose, then, or if that's your main go-to, then you need these skills. These skills are going to be life-saving for you as well. Because obviously that's going to impact your heart rate. It's going to impact your cortisol. It's going to impact how you handle, if you're a woman, perimenopause and menopause, as well as obviously just your overall stress and physical health. So we want the whole family to thrive. That means you need to manage yourself. You need to improve how you're responding to stress and also improve how you're responding to your child. And one of the things that I think is so critical to understand is that the first stage of changing the dynamic in the household is in turning around the way that you talk to your kid, the way you talk to yourself, and also how you understand your child, and then how your child feels understood. All of those skills are the first skills we teach our clients in boot camp, and that we teach that all in week 1. All right, so you might have come across any sort of other like parenting work or services where that takes like weeks and weeks to dive into, or it's like validation is like the biggest skill that a coach might teach for a client, riding out the meltdown and then validating the client after the meltdown, and the child after the meltdown, and then having the child like work out the problem. We teach that stuff in week 1. Like that is the bare bones foundational skill that you need. And if you don't want your sensitive kid to have regular meltdowns, you follow me for that reason, this is the course that you need. manage the meltdowns. You can jump into that at eliminatemeltdowncycle.com and learn more about it. So I've got the link here on the show video. And then I also want to talk about the difference, and we'll dive into that more as we move into wrapping up today's show. So one of the things that I hear so frequently from parents is that they are stuck in teaching their kids' teachers. They're stuck in teaching their relatives how to stop this process, to contribute to the meltdowns, and they want to be able to feel solid in communicating effectively with their child and helping their child feel, again, heard and understood. And that skill set is a skill set that we teach both in week 1 in boot camp and entirely in Manage the Meltdowns course. Okay. So, if you've ever felt like you don't really understand what makes your kid tick, you don't really get what your child needs from you, don't really understand how to think about your kid's needs, Manage the Meltdowns will cover it for you. You don't need to look any further. I'm repping my TEDx t-shirt for those watching the show on YouTube or any of our other platforms, because I gave my TEDx this weekend live. We recorded it, and then it will show up on all the TED places in a couple of months once TED does its vetting process. That's a whole official them stamp process that I have no privy or hand in the timing of that. But it should be coming out in a couple months. But in that process of presenting my speech and practicing for those who were curating the event and supporting the event and working the event, as well as obviously my fellow speakers. And then on Saturday, when I gave the talk live, there were certain people that approached me over the course of this time who really had no idea of the personality trait. And they came to me and they, as I described the trait, because that is one of the high level things that I do in my TEDx speech, is they shared with me, and one of the women who was volunteering, she was working the event. She had been working the event for the entirety of the event process. So with rehearsals and our meetings that we had been doing for months to prep for the show. She came up to me and she said that I had, at the first time that I spoke in my speech, she heard that first rendition and she immediately felt like all of her life had been explained to her once I shared the temperament and put the listener, the audience, in the shoes of a sensitive kid. And that experience was something that she had she was around 60 years old. And I want you, as a parent of a sensitive kid your kid might be 5 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 or maybe even 2. I want you to hear me very clearly. This woman came up to me and she said, I learned more about sensory processing sensitivity after hearing your speech, and I just sat and I cried. She reported she cried tears of gratitude that she finally understood what was going on and how she experienced the world differently, why that was such a strength for her, why she loved working in the arts in her career, why she was so much more aware of other people's experiences compared to the people around her. She said the ripple effect of light bulbs that she had unlocked was pervasive. It was her experience. We had a deep discussion about it. And I want you to observe that if you're parenting a 4-year-old and you're thinking that this information is optional, you really need to understand that this is not a luxury to understand your kid and for your kid to feel understood. Because picture your 4-year-old having 56 more years on this earth and not knowing why they experience the world differently than you, not knowing why they experience the world differently than their siblings, not knowing why they experience the world differently than 80% of the population. Your child is one person. Every 4th person that they experience in the world, 4 other people, if they're one of 5, doesn't experience the world like they do. Now, I was bullied and socially ostracized growing up. So physically, I did not fit the mold of attraction. I was the only redhead in a very small rural town, and or the only redheaded girl. So I had a couple factors going against me in that respect. Not a very athletic kid, so a little differently structured in my body shape. And I mean, I think there were 50 kids in my class from K through 8, around that number, like 48 maybe or something like that. So there were only a couple of us that just didn't really fit in. And I wanted to fit in, whereas some of them necessarily didn't really prioritize that. But I was definitely one who wanted to fit in. And, I wouldn't, and that's obviously my outward observation, but just in terms of um, the preferences, I had the same preferences of all the popular kids. I had the same preferences of the average kiddo. I was pretty average in that respect, and yet I didn't fit the bill. And so the isolation that I experienced was very similar to the isolation that someone who has been a sensitive person and not known it for their entire life. We hear this from our clients who go through boot camp all the time. I always felt like something was different and I didn't really know how or why. And now I see. And then, they go through our work, and with our signature program called boot camp, they settle into finally knowing who they really are. And the skill set that you get to start to build through Manage the Meltdowns course is that very gift that you get to give your kid. And I just want to support you in noticing that that is a priceless gift that not very many children get, even for parents who don't have sensitive children. There's a fair amount of parents who are not parenting in a manner where they're prioritizing emotional health, they're prioritizing emotional regulation, they're prioritizing emotional intelligence. And the skill sets that we teach will impact your entire family, regardless of your kid's temperament. But obviously this work is and for my company is tied to the sensitive temperament. So I am thrilled about that. And this is one of the stories. The other story was another woman who resonated with the mismatch in parenting and the challenge that she had there and the strange relationship that she had as a result with her parents, and how it took so many years to turn it around. After hearing my speech, she felt like she was not alone in that dynamic, and she was appreciative. So I want to highlight that while this young lady was probably 50, so a little bit younger than the first audience member, I want you to understand that the conversations that I had this weekend with strangers who needed their parents to know how they understood the world, that's your future kid if you don't solve this problem. All right, I'm just going to be blunt with you, and I'm not one to sugarcoat. So I really implore you to make this choice to jump into eliminatemeltdowncycle.com and just jump into that course. Manage the Meltdowns is it's going to change how you see your kid. It's also going to change how you think about the problem that you have at hand, so that you stop thinking that your kid is a problem. And that's the other side of things. Again, I went through diagnostic differentiation for sure. So you understand that your kid fits the temperament, and that clarity is obviously highly valuable. However, you also need to know what to do about it. You need to understand the trait. You need to understand how to prevent the meltdown cycle. You need to understand how sensitive kids end up in a meltdown cycle, so you recognize the signs before they get there, not just walking on eggshells prevention. This is another thing that I hear from parents all the time. Parents will say, as long as I just curate their day, we don't have the meltdowns. But what parents, and we used to have, Megan, I learned that I should notice that there are sensitive things in the world for my child. And so now that I notice my child's more sensitive, and then they go on and on and on in our call with what they are doing to prevent the meltdowns from happening. They're engaging in long-standing prep conversations with their kid. They're having very long messages after or conversations after the meltdowns. They're talking to the child and reassuring the child all day. So it's all of this heavy lifting of walking on eggshells. And so managing meltdowns doesn't just require you to reduce the meltdowns, right? It also requires you to stop them from coming back and stopping your child from perpetuating them without your support, right? Because if you take a vacation, um, by yourself with your spouse, or both, more than one, um, your kid needs to be able to hang on. Your kid needs to be able to tolerate that, and not just tolerate it, but thrive. Where, if you miss a night of FaceTime, you're not worried that your kid's going to be devastated, and your child isn't feeling such deep grief that they're worried you're not coming home tomorrow, right? And you can't just like let loose and just enjoy the sunset and delicious food and be okay talking to your kid in 24 hours. This is such a completely different dynamic than a parent who's stuck in the meltdown cycle. We often find that even taking time away from your children, you're thinking about them all day anyways. And so you're not really gone. You're just like managing from afar, or managing in your brain, like, what is the return going to be like? So I want you to have this skill that's more pervasive. And obviously with our work in boot camp, and I want parents to really understand the difference, like taking the meltdowns from an 11 to 7 is the objective of the meltdown manage your meltdowns course, and that is what we teach our clients to do right off the bat when they come into boot camp. So hopefully that's you understand that's stage 1 of what we teach in boot camp. The course content itself is different. So families who decide or are trying to decide if they need to come into boot camp, if they want to come into boot camp, or they're planning to, but it's just not right there. None of the content is redundant. It is all differently outlined, because I have to say things in a different way with an understanding this is all you get, right? With the managed meltdowns. However, it is comprehensive. It's extremely comprehensive. So considering that, the focus is on being able to empower you with a clear, simple action step. Each module, there are 7 modules for you to walk through, and also assignments associated with that. So you're reflecting, how do I perceive my child? What assumptions was I making, and all of that, as well as correcting them, and then changing your dynamic with your child. And you have an opportunity to do that effectively. Now, the next thing that I want to highlight is your goal for your relationship with your child. If your sensitive child is having meltdowns on a weekly basis, maybe just once a week, right? And maybe they're 4, then this is still a process that you need to learn from. If your child's having meltdowns once a week and their child is 7, then this is the introduction to the work that you need, because there are clear skills with a 3-year gap in development that your child needs to demonstrate, because meltdowns stop at age 4 for sensitive kids and for non-sensitive kids, unless they are missing skills. So this is an opportunity for you to dive into manage the meltdowns, see if you can cut that all the way down to 0. And if you can't, then continue to work with my team using our method. We'll get you there, and that would be a conversation about boot camp with my team. But eliminatemeltdowncycle.com teaches you all of what you get to learn for the process in understanding your sensitive child, changing the dynamic, and truly making sure that you stop the cycle with of your own accord, or helps you understand whether or not you need professional support. And I cover that in the coursework as well. All right. Okay. So that's that. I believe I have covered all of my points for this conversation, and the observations that I've heard from people around the world and over the years. And I am so excited for you to jump into this gift I have for you. What a pleasure it has been to set this up for success. Had my coaches go through it, and they are just thrilled for the opportunity for parents to jump into this and then come into boot camp if it's a good fit. They are really clearly excited about the skill sets that are going to be built in MM, and it can give you a leg up if you're wondering, what do I do in the meantime while I'm waiting to get into boot camp, or discerning whether or not I actually need to get into boot camp. So I am so pumped about that for you. And I am thrilled to continue to support this community and answer any questions. So clearly the link to get in is eliminatemeltdowncycle.com. And you can type that into your browser. You'll also find the link on the show notes or below this video if you catch us on YouTube. And alternatively, you can go find it on my any of my socials. It's on our Linktree link, as well as via our website. All right, so go to eliminatemeltdowncycle.com, dive in, grab it while it's up, and I am happy to ensure that you see the result that you're looking for with that work. All right, let's rock it. Okay, bye. Have a good day.